All right, I think we'll get started. Let's see, are we okay? Okay, welcome everybody to office hours this afternoon. I think most of you in attendance are frequent flyers to this occasion, so I'll just tell you that the presentation has been dropped in the chat. Thank you, Christy. And we do try to take questions throughout the office hours, so if you have questions, just raise your hand and we will unmute you. So again, today is May 4th. Welcome to our office hours. This is probably the 8th one we've done maybe, and I know we have 4 more weeks of testing, 22 more days, not that we're counting, but 22 more days, including today, of testing and 4 more office hours. So as a reminder, our office hours cover some of the topics for Smarter, NGSS, and our alternate assessment system. As usual, we have some reminders today that you probably have seen before, and also some new tidbits of information. So without any further ado, let's get started. Again, my name is Abe Christ with the Performance Office. I'm joined by my colleagues today here, Janet Stuck, Deirdre Ducharme, who are going to be presenting. Also kind of behind the scenes, Christy Alvarino, Jeff Gregg, and Jen Cho from CAI. All our contact is here if you need, our info is here if you need it. As I mentioned, Jen Cho is here from Cambium. This is their phone number, their email, so on and so forth. Thank you, Jen, for making the meeting this afternoon. It's always good to have you as well. So again, most of you are veterans, so I'm not going to cover this for too long. We do office hours every Thursday until June. We had sent this Teams invite to every DA, and you can share it to others. This is an optional session, and we do encourage you to ask any questions if you have any, because we'd love to share our knowledge. Sometimes it's not just in the slides, and it might be behind the answer to a question you have. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. This is just our training page where we've posted all our previous office hours in the recorded versions, as well as the PDF form. You can navigate to this page if you go to our main student assessment page and then hit training on the left. You'll see every previous office hours. So we've mentioned this the last couple weeks. Speaking of professional development, our office, the Performance Office, just recently started a new series that we probably will continue next year, and sort of branded as the Behind the Numbers from Data to Dashboards. And this series really covers the connection between what's on the EdSite reports and how it connects to our accountability reports. Each session will focus on one particular topic. We've already done one session that's recorded. You can, if you hit the links here, you can register for them. And our next one, our second session, relates to finding contacts and talking about the chronic absenteeism accountability indicator. That's on May 12th, so next Friday. If you're interested, please hit the flyer here and you can register for this. Again, there's 3 planned for this spring. We've already done one, and there's one on the 12th and then one following that. Another sort of offshoot reminder that we want to squeeze in here, just because it's important, is the collection of our CPFA data that opened for the first time this year with individual student collection. As a reminder, the information about the collection can be found off this link, and as a double reminder, the freeze date for this effort is July 21st, 2023. So if you as a DA aren't involved in the collection necessarily of this, we really encourage you to stress this date to your colleagues who might have oversight of this. This is not a flexible date this year, so we're really, that the 21st is the 21st. And the date, actually it's due the 6th, but the freeze is on the 21st, excuse me. And then a little bit about the accounting for the district's staff that need to be set up with accounts. As of this morning, LEA security managers had been notified, just because not every district had set up accounts for access to this application. So again, you might not be the one, but if you have colleagues who have oversight of this data collection, we really encourage you to send them basically to this link here, which contains all the support materials for this important collection this year, which is new. Okay, here's the presentation overview. I won't spend much time. We'll just get right to business. Here are testing numbers as of this week. As you can see, this is one of the busiest times of year. The last week we've really started zooming. So we've jumped from 70,000 tests administered as of last week or completed as of last week to now 192,000 tests completed as of today. And NGSS, we've jumped to 10,000 over the last week. So we are really, things are starting to pick up. On average, the busiest couple days of the year are around May 9th, 10th or so. So we really expect things to continue to rise over the next week or so. So I know you all are probably testing furiously, but and you have till June 2nd, but the numbers in the state are really rising, and we have a long ways to go, but we're getting closer and closer to finishing. Couple reminders about just general stuff. All our materials can be found off this link. They were delivered via paper at the beginning or at the end of January. And as I said on the last slide, June 2nd is the close date. A couple new things about preliminary results. It looks like we are going to meet the date of the 12th. I know we've been talking about this the last couple weeks in terms of the results release as a possibility. It looks like data checks are checking out just fine. So as of next Friday, we will open the gates in terms of individual student results for NGSS, Smarter Balance, and our alternate assessments. The question always comes up, well, hey, how quickly are these released? Basically for NGSS, CTAA, and CTOS, the release is almost immediately. So you'll take the test and within a day or so, you'll see those student scores. Smarter Balanced has to be completely finished, both ELA and math, and then the clock starts counting for about 10 business days. We give ourselves 10 business days before those scores appear in the CRS. Does it usually go a little quicker? Yep, but we give us this buffer. So if a student finished testing on the 12th, their scores would likely be in the CRS by the 22nd. Again, all tests that were taken before the 12th are going to appear, actually, will it be May 2nd, up until May 2nd for Smarter Balance, because that gives us the 10 business days. Actually be a little bit before that, but I think you understand what we mean by that. So we will communicate to DAs as soon as we know definitively, but it's looking at like it will be the 12th. One other point about this too, folks have asked, when will all the results be in the CRS? Generally by mid-June, you'll see everything into the system by then. So that would be, although we don't consider them necessarily final because our final results are really on our EdSite site, because that's done with our calculations, that by June 15th, everything, all tests have been scored and are in the CRS. Okay, I think this is the slide where I pass the baton to my colleague.
Me. Thank you, Abe.
Oh, yep.
So we wanted to share with you, the overview is similar to last week. There's not a lot of new information, so we'll just go through this relatively quickly as mostly reminders. So we wanted to touch base on the appeals process. We are emphasizing this because we encourage you to work with your staff and train them well, of course, and encourage them to demonstrate active proctoring. So since we've opened the testing window, we've had over 512 appeals processed. And just this week, there was 153, but at this point, since we created the slide, it's more like 200. So when we process the appeals, and this is when you typically work with Christy on the process, many of the appeals require documentation submitted in a timely manner so that they can be processed. And we want to emphasize that in all communication across our platform in assessment, do not include students' name or personally identifiable information. We're able to use SACID to look up students, so it's much cleaner that way. And if you make an error in the interims, they do not need to be reset or invalidated. And you can refer to the TIDE user guide on page 62, which clarifies elements of the appeals process. We wanted to emphasize, as part of the appeals process in general, Deirdre worked hard creating a new test administrator training process that you can turn around in your district or use portions of it to train your staff. And in some cases, when you are submitting large appeals, for example, if a teacher makes an error across the whole class, we encourage you to have the teacher retake the test administrator training that you've provided in your district, because they may have missed some step that caused that large error or large appeal request. And I'm going to turn this over to my colleague Deirdre to talk to you about CT SEDS and TIDE.
Great, thanks, Janet. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. We're in the home stretch. It's almost the weekend, and we thank you for taking time out to join us today. The next couple of slides cover the CT SEDS and TIDE import/sync, and the content really is no different than what we've conveyed from previous office hours. So I'm just going to take a moment to discuss or highlight some of the key takeaways when we're looking at accommodations in TIDE and making sure that those accommodations are appropriate based on the students' finalized IEP and 504 plans and CT SEDS. So one of the most common questions we receive from our district administrators and case managers pertains to accommodations not showing up in TIDE. So an IEP or 504 is maybe soon to be finalized in CT SEDS, or maybe it's newly finalized as yesterday or today, but why is it that those accommodations aren't reflected in TIDE? So as a reminder, the begin date of the student's 504 or IEP is a critical feature to look at when you're in the CT SEDS system. So only those accommodations and designated supports that are reflected in an active IEP will be imported to the TIDE system. So there's another timing piece that goes into the begin date of a plan, and it may take up to 2 days to have those supports from CT SEDS reflected in TIDE. So for example, if there is a begin date as of yesterday or today, just keep in mind that you're not going to see those supports, those new supports or accommodations in TIDE today or even tomorrow. You might have to wait until Monday. So if you're seeing this, just keep in mind or reach out to someone who does have access to CT SEDS who can do a quick lookup as far as that date goes. Or if you have questions, certainly keep emailing us, and we would be happy to do some investigation as far as what we're seeing in CT SEDS. What else to think about as far as the CT SEDS sync? If you have, as a reminder, if you're seeing that there are supports or accommodations in TIDE that are no longer applicable to the student, so perhaps they were part of an initial manual selection earlier in the year, or maybe part of an older IEP plan, and the plan that's currently in CT SEDS no longer captures that accommodation. As a reminder, you will need to remove those supports and accommodations in TIDE locally. So the import that happens adds accommodations and supports, but doesn't take them away. So if you see that there's something that needs to come out, you can manage that locally. If it's an accommodation like a scribe or human reader, please reach out to our office, provide us a student SACID. Janet and I will do a cross comparison with the active IEP or 504 plan and CT SEDS, and then we can remove from TIDE accordingly. If you have any questions about this process or accommodations, never hesitate to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to work with you to make sure that your students have the right supports at the time of testing. Then, as a quick reminder, we've included some links to critical resources that support teachers who are providing those special documented accommodations per an approved IEP or 504 plan. So if you have teachers that are serving in any capacity as a scribe or a bubbler, maybe a human signer or a human reader of the assessments, make sure that your teachers are trained, that they review the resources as specific to the accommodation indicated on the slide. And in some cases, we've included a protocol such as for the read aloud, and that form can be signed and then maintained locally in district. If you have any questions about how any of these accommodations work, such as the math manipulatives or the non-embedded calculator, feel free to reach out to these resources or give us a call.
Thanks, Dee. So we wanted to present this slide one more time as a reminder that there are many manuals for your reference, and this is a quick way to access them for your use. You can also get them from the CT portal under resources by name. And some administration reminders in terms of your various tests and providing access to your students. You want to make sure that you're preparing the setting appropriately, depending on the needs of the student, and that includes the group size, and provide as many practice opportunities as possible. And one thing that has come up recently is as you're providing practice opportunities, make sure that you familiarize students for the designated supports or accommodations or where to access different features within the practice test. And if the student is reluctant to use those, then you may want to consider removing them from the IEP if the student's not feeling that they're comfortable using that accommodation. And this slide also references ordering paper materials and the technology guide. And above all, we want to encourage you to make sure your teachers are proctoring actively, meaning they are looking at what students are responding, troubleshooting as they go around the classroom. We also wanted to mention the NGSS assessment. This has come up a few times. We wanted to remind you that there are 3 different science test forms, one in English, one in Braille, and one in Spanish. What's available to a student at the time of testing is based on what is in the TIDE settings. So for example, if your student in TIDE is indicated for the science Spanish version, and the teacher selects the English version, they're going to get a message that says no tests found. So you want to make sure that your test administrators are looking carefully at what is expected for each student, so they select the appropriate test. So at this time, we've shared a lot of information, and we wondered if you had some questions. If you do have some questions, please feel free to raise your hand and we will unmute you so that you can ask your question. I don't think I'm seeing any questions at this time. So I guess we'll continue. So this section is about our alternate assessment, and the alternate assessment being administered at this time includes the Connecticut Alternate Science Assessment and the Connecticut Alternate Assessment for ELA and Math. And as a reminder, the Connecticut Alternate Assessment is an assessment that's administered throughout the year, but during this testing window, the scoring worksheet is submitted by the trained teacher into the DEI. Next slide, please. So these are resources for you related to our alternate assessments. And these include overviews, checklists to help you stay on track, and the system user guide and manuals. And we do have specific manuals related to students who are blind, deaf, or deafblind to assist the teachers in preparing for those tests for those students. A special word about preparation for the CTAA. Both ELA and math have directions for test administration, which are secure, and those trained teachers have access to them to support their administration of these tests. Additionally, there are secure PDFs of each grade and subject specific test, which teachers can use and download so that students who perhaps must be administered a test in a paper form, or if they're using, for example, an eye gaze board, the teachers can use the paper materials to support the students. And in terms of the CTAS or the science assessment, these have specific materials and a script to go with each administration of the items. And on this page are also additional supports and training resources for you. This is another word about the directions and PDFs for those assessments for the CTAA. Those teachers who are trained have access to a secure inbox in Tide or the Forms tab on the left you see in orange under Preparing for Testing, and they can download the scripts or PDFs from those areas. We often get calls about teachers not being able to access the alternate assessment tests for their students. And this page is about reasons why a teacher may not be able to access the assessment. One that at this point, I think the alternate eligibility form has been submitted for the majority of our students through the DEI, and those allowed access to the tests. The teacher must be trained and have the appropriate user role in Tide. The last bullet here talks about the early stopping rule. So, for example, this rarely happens, but I wanted to let you know that if a teacher was has submitted the early stopping rule for a student, let's say a student who is an English learner participates typically in the alternate ELP assessment, and an early stopping rule was submitted, it's possible that that teacher doesn't know or communicate with the teacher who would be administering the ELA and math. So the early stopping rule applies to the alternate ELP assessment, ELA math, and the alternate science. So none of those would be administered if the student was approved for the early stopping rule. So we want to make sure that there's clear communication in the district about those students who qualify for the early stopping rule. Any questions? Okay.
This is the last stop for the train. So if you do have any burning questions, please raise your hand and we'll take them. We'll give you another 30 seconds or so. We take kind comments in the chat too. So
No, thanks, Alec. We feel the same way about you. Actually, all of you. You're great to work with.
all right, we'll call it an office hours. We'll see you next week at 3 o'clock. Have a safe week and continue to watch the number of testers zooming. Good luck out there. If you need anything, please contact us.
Take
Bye,
care.
everyone. Take care.
Thank
Thank you.